Well, this is something you can do at home. I use the 5-period RSI on the bottom screen, and on the top I have a 5-minute chart. And I have the 50-yard line marked. And here's the big hidden secret of RSI and why divergences fail and why they make money. So why is divergence sometimes the market doesn't respond to divergence? Well, it actually does. It's just that it's a failed rally, which sets you up for a backdraft, momentum, vapor trail, chemtrail entry. And it gets really complicated when you look down at the RSI and you're looking at closing prices also. But closing prices, you can draw the trend line on closing and also draw it on the RSI. So you have this perfect rhythm here. You have a 5-minute closing prices, you have a quadruple top becomes a bottom, and momentum, in other words, the market takes a breath after it's been punished. So how can you tell if it's okay to pull the trigger on the 5-minute chart if you're going to momentum trade? You basically got to babysit the thing, or you're just going to place your orders just for good old sake at the new low here to capture that great price. And if you turn on the wicks, you'd see whether or not, see it closed right into it, inverted hammer, closed right into it. But that's a whole nother drama as the candles. You don't want to go there. Just keep it to this, because if you're really trading RSI, you really want to look at RSI because it's based on the price. So you're indexing price, and the index has a market breadth to it. It also has support and resistance. So tops become bottoms in RSI, and tops become bottoms in price, and you have one more attribute, one more thing to look at to consider. Now this may be overloading, sensory overload, because when you look down, but of course if you look down at the bottom panel and you realize, okay, that's the index, you can still draw your entries on that. And they'll still be good entries, because if this was a good entry here, based on this concept of a trendline break, pulls out, finds support, and then you continue for another price pulse back into the floor naturally. There's so many revolving doors here, right? It's coming back into that floor. People are getting the fuck out. But if you're looking for the inversion of the divergence, the inversion of divergence is called a positive and negative reversal. So after you get divergence, every time you see this trade and you wonder why it didn't pan out and make a bunch of money, because it obviously is divergence, comes down, market's losing momentum, big spring vault off of that, plus there is a flat, becomes a bottom here, you get this perfect Elliott wave, 1, 2, 3 burst. But the problem is, when it gets to here, it is more overbought than it was back here at this price. And this price is way up here. So since the price is higher and it's or the price is lower here, but it's more overbought than it was off of this reference line, something's terribly wrong. It's inverted. If this is lower, RSI should be lower, just like it was here. RSI goes down. Here's where they agree. There's confluence here. There is no kickback. When RSI is more overbought than here, if the market was going down, that would be a sell. And here here's another divergence. So here's a divergence that causes a sell, a temporary sell. If you consider this is more overbought than this, comparing these two instances, and it was okay sell, it wasn't the greatest in the world. It's kind of over because the trend line that you draw on the triple top that becomes a bottom here, this is where I got the whole top become a bottom thing. I mean, it does exist as off of RSI. Studying an RSI, like here's divergence, perfect divergence back here. This is a 5-minute chart. You're getting this beautiful climax here where just doesn't get any better. A nice, fast, quick, and dirty divergence. Not really here for this sell-off. And, of course, clock's in the way. You can't see the This is the top become a bottom in the 5. So here's your wedge. Pull the trigger. Load the wagon here. You could sell with quite a bit of confidence that that was going to be the place to punch it just for that one burst price pulse. But see how this is more oversold and it's at a higher price. Projecting off of this is going to be your typical projection, but it's just it's a perfect setup in momentum. More oversold. You always want to buy oversold, but the fact that it's inverted from here, it's not coming with it. Price didn't go oversold, but the index did. Same thing here. More oversold, higher price. You just keep on getting buys. If you reference this to here, you're going to buy this. You're also going to buy it because obviously it is the failed seller's zone. So they're going to feed off of that. And here is the quadruple top trap. And we get divergence here for a sell, but it's setting up for another buy because this divergence is short-lived. I mean, you make the money here, but then if you take this and compare it to this, you have a buy in essence. Although you're getting a little bit too long in the tooth for that trade, I suppose that's what people would say. It's what a terrible thing to say. But here's a divergence, and here's your sell. Even this sell here, and then there's one more possible sell. You're still more overbought. Now you're going to be buying on if this is more oversold than here, and the price never violates this. Say the price only makes it back to here, and this top become a bottom zone, and now you're more oversold here. You're going to buy that. But it's you have to be on all over the thing. You have to be on top of it. Here's a hidden little pullback buy. These are actually better because they're short-term, quick price pulse. Here's another more oversold, higher price, still marching up. But the problem is here's what they call a hidden divergence. Is that this divergence is happening underneath the projection off of this one. So right up here you have, like, I'm sure MACDs are crossing over pretty severely at this point. And this would be your long-term buy signals, is you're retesting this area on RSI. Meanwhile, this is going up. More oversold, higher price. If you launch off all these legs here, everything here is cued like that. And of course the sellers are having a riot because this divergence kicked in for them, and they're pulling it back to here. And then, so how much, if you're waiting for an entry on RSI here off of this thread that goes through the middle where this was the bottom, this top became a bottom here for this one last gas, but then you fall through the floor. Here's your first chance to sell right here. So this is the vacuum of the index. It's the index vacuum, and here there's no vacuum in price. Price is completely symmetrically based off of this as you come down off this top. So you really, at this point, you connect these two and find the lowest close within this, and that's going to be your projection. Of course, you blow through that projection amazingly. Without, just brutally. And here is a big hidden sell. If you consider this to be almost the same price, and look at where that reference is off of, it's off of here, so severely overbought, just completely out of the woods, and you're right up against this doji, you're up against the floor of that. You could make a trend line here. So here's a divergence, and that's a big deal price. So if the RSI pokes below it, this is your first really nice spring-loaded divergence. Of course, you just come back to natural top, become a bottom. And this is your only buy in the last price pulse. This was supposed to give you a nice run. It didn't. But That's a 5-minute chart. So you let this update. So we're coming into the buy here. So you'd buy it here on limits, or you're going to wait 5 minutes. The divergence kicked in pretty good for these guys. So the 5-minute divergence does work. It totally works. You just got to realize that it's setting up. If this thing's going to keep crawling up, it's the buy signal for the trend trader. So divergence is not the end all be all. It's just a detour. Market's going to take a detour, and all these little detours make money. Here's a support becomes resistance in RSI before this plunge. Didn't bear much fruit, but it just set up for the final assault. So RSI really, you can watch it on the 1-minute chart. See how RSI is actually working. You can see if you play it back, you'll see live or playback. RSI is moving up a lot more than price right now. So that would tell you, hey, it's probably going to tank. Like this would be your 1-minute reversal, right? That could still fail, but it's saying, you know what? We just kicked up. I don't know if you can imagine. This is where I'm drawing it off of. If you 1-minute chart, you're selling that because this relationship, the vacuum is forming underneath the index. Like here is your vacuum forming, not so much here, and then you could draw your trend line on RSI, and when it breaks, you're already short. There was the divergence that caused this sell. Here's the sell on the 1 minute. You can compare these two prices. So it's like a backdraft. It's like a, I guess, imagine calling it. And so you would now you get divergence. So what do? You have to cover that trade and buy it. You know, if you're really going to trade the 1-minute chart, you're going to be in and out, in and out, in and out. And that's just, so if this fails and you got a trend line here, you know, he's really, I bought divergence there, but maybe you know, what if this comes up to here and the price only makes it to here? Sellers are going to come in. You can certainly see that's a pretty, got to be really on top of the market for all these little moves. So if you're staying with it here, if you turn on the candles and you had a trailing stop here, you're still in this trade, or you just sold this doji. So you could have just sold the breakout of the brokeout of that candle. But the candles don't let you see the RSI, what the RSI is thinking, and the RSI is completely a close price system. There's no open unless you run the opens of RSI. There's no open. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents on the 5-period RSI with a 50-yard line here. Go to the 15, you can see all the trades you missed. Here's the pullback on the 15. You could sync this to the 5. More oversold, higher price. You got a doji becomes a support. Here's your triple divergence. The nice thing about it is trend lines, when moving averages, aren't going to be able to keep up with the shift in time frame. So if you go to the half hour, you'll see the same. It's easier, you know. Half hour is not as many signals, but here's a great bottom becomes a top in RSI, and bottom becomes a top in price. You're going down. Here's your first sell. Here's your big sell where you have prices lower, RSI is more overbought. Slam. That's a trend continuation trade. But what caused this is a triple divergence right here. So you could have bought that triple divergence knowing that you're going to have to, you counter trend trade it. That's the detour, and then come to the 50-yard line. I mean, it's fucking retarded, right? 50-yard line with all this confluence. Here's another. This is supposed to be a sell. More overbought. Of course, we're running out of momentum here at this point. Your first reversal is here to go long. So no divergence really caused that. Here's another chance to buy. slightly below the 50 and pulled back in, but the problem is triple divergence is coming in here. Big pullback, but here is a reversal to buy. So you're constantly buy, sell, buy, sell. But it's just like anything else. You would be buying and selling it. You go to the 4-hour chart, and not as many signals. Pretty boring. I guess here's your only big. No, I don't. You just don't see anything. You know, problem is our side doesn't work unless you're on the 1 hour. Like for me, I just want to trade. Like here's divergence on the 1 hour. I think you can see that one's pretty fucking obvious, and we get a perfect touch here. If you know this mystic Gartley-ship. But here's your or any index, right? I call it the transverse index. I got my own special pet name for it, the transverse index. But look at this divergence. 5 period. Would you sell up into that? I guess you would want to see what the wicks were doing at that point. So here it's really kind of a clean doji. If you put a doji on top of that and say I got a doji and divergence, I mean this is pretty blockhead shit. I know people make a ton of money trading just dojis alone. You can, it's not like you can't. Here's a trend line break you can make a ton of money on. Yeah, breaks that I'm selling. Yeah, they're gonna take it back up here and fuck with you, but looks like they're gonna crush the dollar here. Euro's gonna go to 107 now. Pretty brutal. Everybody's all freaking out. So, RSI, you love it to death, but look at it on close here. It's just beautiful. Beautiful. So, 1 hour, 5 period, 5 minute if you're smoking crack, right? You're on the 5. So here's my 1 minute chart. That was the sell back here. Remember this? Here was my sell, and this is that flat spot, which is the doji of the price. So how you like this RSI divergence here that failed? So that was my sell signal, and you're below this, and that was supposed to kick in and if you take this forward. So you can do the breakout here, breakout, pullback. But 1 minute chart, geez, you really got to be on top of that. 5 minute chart, no signal. This big divergence kicked in pretty hard though. So if you're waiting, you have to wait. This could be failing here too. This is supposed to be the big not quite a buy signal because it actually closed lower there. But that divergence on the 1 hour, major. Just sharp as a tack. And triple top here, just dumb shit. Here is your flag out with your buy signal in RSI. Here's a big buy in RSI. Off of that, come back, got a top, become a bottom. That's probably the perfect spring-loaded trade. It must be the ultimate in thrust movement. Here's the good old boring euro versus pound with a buy signal here. Real tight divergence, kind of clunky, but there's your sell. More rebut. Prices not quite one here. See, this didn't go. Here was your only sell, was this one here. If you connect these two, here's your trend continuation. Here's a momentary buy, little pullback. Here's divergence that causes a sell here. You'd be selling that for trend continuation if you think this is down, going down. There's your divergence here for a decent sell, not the best, not as good as this sell here. So if you connect these dots, better sell. So yeah, just go to the next thing. You see, there's no signals on the daily. It sucks. Really nothing there. 4 hours sucks. Pretty tough. I don't see any really great signals there. It's too much risk. Better to be on the 5-minute chart or the half hour. Look at this wonderful divergence. Triple top in here. Just can't squeak out the top of that puppy. Here's a nice dramatic oversold at a higher price. There's a nice 15-minute. Even picks up the entries on this so-called noise in here, so that people are like, well, what do you do? Every time this thing comes below here, you could have bought that trench there. And here was the sell. Here was the divergence. Nice triple divergence here. Not a lot of money, but it sets you up for the pullback into the major. Anything below the 50 you could buy too. You could just be a complete whore and just keep buying everything below the 50. But this here's a nice cute divergence. Sets you up for a nothing actually there, but you have to wait till here. See, now this is the setup. This doji, you have to find that in the RSI, and that is a continuation. Here's one more. Constantly getting trendline confirmation with momentum, lack of momentum in an uptrend, or just too fast of a pullback in an uptrend. So you'd be buying that. Of course, everybody's going to get out at this last known support, let's hope. That's the idea. Get out revolving door style. This is a 1-minute chart. Wow. Here's a divergence here. Guess if you bought this, you were a genius. Way down, and it's pretty harsh. Try to buy the first pullback on that. I guess this is the only one. Pretty tough to trade that 1-minute chart on the pound. 5-minute charts, I guess. RSI is going to give you a little bit longer legged entry here. 5-minute divergence that causes. So here's a divergence that causes the signal. So you see divergence, you see the momentum loss, people coming in. And here they cleaned up, but if you go back, if you compare this to this, you don't have a signal to buy. You'd have to go all the way back to here and say that, oh, I'm buying because, but you're probably buying because of that price anyways, and you scalp to here and you're out of that trade. Anyways, 5-period RSI.